Listen for your name.
Here.
Hey, good morning. It's time for Right Time Radio. It's me, Lynn Donovan. Sue's still out of town, and we got Tay with us. Hi, Tay.
That's it. It's going to be you and I.
It is you and me. I am my own guest.
Well, that's... guess that'll work. I'm kind of my own guest anyway, so...
That's true. Yeah. It's kind of like talking to yourself. It's the only way to have an intelligent conversation.
Well, I usually do it because I need a good second opinion.
That's funny. Is this... you and I'm not hearing me in here.
I had no idea.
Maybe I am. Maybe I am. I'm just wasn't hearing it right. Well, what I thought I'd talk about, since I'm the only one here and I can kind of do whatever I want.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, within reason, yeah.
Yeah, I've made some changes in my writing, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change genres. Really kind of an extreme change. You know, I've been writing romance, been writing historical romance and contemporary romance, but I'm completely changing to cozy mysteries. And since cozy mysteries is so much different, it has a different audience, is really the reason. For you to keep it all straight on Amazon, you kind of have to go with a different pen name.
Okay.
So I stand before you today as Lynn Hunter. That is my new pen name.
Okay. Write that down.
Yeah, write that down.
Is that L-Y-N-N?
It is L-Y-N-N, just like the other one.
I would put L-I-N-N. I would have made it unique.
Well, that's kind of a different continent. But yeah, I could put it L-Y-N-N-E because that's actually the French version of the female, because Lynn is kind of unisex name, but I could have done that. You know, and how people come up with pen names, I always ask them because they always have some link to different things. And so what I've done is my husband's middle name is Hunter. So that way I'm still basically representing him in my name. Okay. So that's how that worked out for me. So Lynn Hunter is now writing cozy mysteries. I haven't published anything yet, but it'll be happening really, really soon.
Okay, so for those people that may not be aware, kind of what does that writing style entail? I mean, when you say cozy mystery, if I was saying, okay, what is it?
Yeah. Well, you know, there's a show on TV called Dexter, and it's this guy that peels people's skin. That's not a cozy mystery.
That's, what's her name's, who am I thinking of that writes those ones?
Well, Angela Lansbury.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about one of our local authors.
Tracy Beach. Yeah, that's Tracy Beach's kind of
exactly.
story.
There we go.
If you think of Murder, She Wrote with Angela Lansbury, Monk is
that's
a
one of my
cozy
favorites.
mystery.
I like watching him.
Exactly. And really Columbo, too.
Yeah.
But what it is it's... there are murders. There's murders, there's killings, but they're not as graphic. It's off stage. If you do see the dead body, it's not blood and guts and gore. It's just somebody's maybe laying in a little bit of blood, and you don't
Dallas.
see. Yeah.
Who Shot JR?
Yeah, Who Shot? I watched that. Yeah. That was good.
Did you know, just kind of off track a little bit, that they showed a lot of the because they're trying to make it to where nobody knew who did it. So they had all these takes of all the actors doing it. They actually had Larry Hagman doing it.
Really?
And so I'm like, Larry.
He shot himself.
JR shot himself.
I am my own grandpa.
Wow. That was pretty...
That's interesting. I didn't know they did that. Yeah, that's
pretty funny to watch.
Fascinating.
Because just the look on his face, like, really?
Yeah, what?
It's JR's twin brother.
Oh, no. Well, now in that kind of show, that could happen.
Yeah, that's true.
That's always going to happen. But anyway, so, so it's... there can be romance. There doesn't have to be. Mm-hmm. It's usually a little more low-key. And the bottom line is it's squeaky clean. Very squeaky clean. That's cozy mysteries.
Okay, gotcha.
And so you typically have a female sleuth, but it can be a guy because obviously you've got Monk. But typically it is a woman. She is a amateur sleuth. She's never a professional detective or anything like that. This is always kind of a side hobby for her. She typically has some kind of a pet. Whether that pet has anything to do with the investigating or not, it's just kind of part of the nuance of it. And, of course, at the end of every story, she solves some kind of crime that the local police are not able to solve.
Gotcha.
So the local police don't necessarily have to be bunglers. You know, maybe they just took what you call Occam's razor and said the simplest answer is the right answer, so we're just going to rule this an accident. And she's like, no, I know this is not an accident. So she takes it further and solves the mystery.
So if there's something about it that just doesn't everything doesn't line up right.
Yeah. Okay. So that's your cozy mystery.
Okay.
And like no high chase runnings with the cars and stuff like that. So mine, I kind of hit several of those. Mine is actually called a Dachshund Cozy Mystery, and you all know I have, 1,000 dachshunds at home. Okay, only 6, but still. So I had to have a dachshund in the story.
Okay.
And she named him Sherlock, which just makes that all more fun.
That would be appropriate, yeah.
And it's set in Florence, Colorado, because it's a small town. They're always small towns. And in 1935. So it's right after Prohibition has ceased. World War I's behind them. World War II hasn't happened yet. So they're kind of on top of the world in 1935. So I thought that was a really fun time to write about. My character's name is Trixie, and of course her little dachshund is Sherlock. So I brought an excerpt, but why don't we go to commercial, and when we come back, I will start reading and give you a little bit of what this sounds like.
Be right back.
Okay. All right, we are back with Right Time Radio, and I am my own guest today, but I'm here under my pen name, Lynn Hunter.
So, glad to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Tay. I've heard a lot about you from the other co-host.
I'm not sure how to take that.
It was all good stuff. It was all good stuff.
All right. Okay with that.
And before I start reading, I want to just go ahead and tell everybody, those of you who remember my play, Haunted Java, had a character that just took the show, and she was a ghost, and her name was Lily. And Lily is based on what we've been told by the mediums who have come into the Rialto Theater, that she actually existed and she danced on the show and on the stage and all that. So I wrote that play about her. So I started this again in 1935. So Miss Lily is in this as well, okay. But she's alive. But this is where she dies. Yeah, I know. Well, it's like sucks. Forward and backwards, and I know. Bless her heart. But I figure we saw her as a ghost. We need to see her as a live human being. So here we are.
Keeps dinging over there.
I don't know. It must be my. I've got my computer in here, and I did not silence it. It is now silenced. There. I never thought of that. I silenced my phone. Okay, so here we go. Now, this is the prologue.
Okay.
And, with the prologue, you kind of see what happens at the end, and then you come back to the beginning. So that's kind of where we are. And 5, 6, 7, 8. Lily Brighton practiced alone on the dark, empty Rialto stage, trying to get a rather difficult routine down. Sunlight from the lobby and a single ghost light in the back were her only sources of light, but it was all she needed. Her throat was dry with an unquenchable thirst, and her head hurt. She was exhausted, too, but she was not going to let Kathy McCoy have the satisfaction of choreographing a dance routine that Lily could not master. Just one more time through the routine, then she'd allow herself another drink of water. 5, 6, 7, 8. She planted her foot, turned, kicked, letting her foot go higher than her head. Her signature St. Louis, Missouri Rockets move. Kathy's choreography didn't call for such a kick, but Lily embellished the routine. She'd read in the New York Times last year that Samuel Roxy had changed her old dance troupe's name to the Radio City Rockettes. She sighed and stumbled out of the dance step. She could have been there on that stage in New York City, showing the young gals what it was all about, if it hadn't been for Mr. Roxy. He had no reason to fire her, but he did. Blatantly told her he couldn't employ a line dancer once she reached 40 years of age. What a cad. She hated him. Here she was nearly two years later, and she could kick just as high as ever. She kicked over her head just to show she could. even though there was no one there to witness. "Oh!" she screamed to nobody and sidestepped to her starting point and counted off again. Her body ached, but she refused to give in to its demands. 5, 6, 7, 8. Stepping into the complicated routine, she hit each mark, spun each spin, kicked each kick, and landed the last move perfectly. She held the poise as if there was an audience leaping to their feet and flooding the stage with the sound of their applause. She smiled and blew kisses to the imaginary audience and limped as she turned to walk off the insatiable cramps in her leg. She needed water. Panting, she tossed a small towel around her neck, wiped the sweat from her face, and she walked over to the water cooler, filled a paper cup. Its glug, glug, glug sound took her back to the day when she confronted her previous dance troupe owner, Samuel Margert. He was her mentor and friend, or so she thought. They stood next to the water jug, a lot like this one, and Lily filled her small paper cup shaped like a cone and swigged the refreshing cool water down her hot throat. "But Margie, you promised me." She hated the whine in her voice, but Mr. Roxy, the new owner, had caught her completely by surprise when he gave her the boot. Samuel Margert had promised she'd dance with this troupe until she couldn't anymore, just because he'd sold the troupe to Samuel Roxy, all because Margert's spoiled, rotten little wife had talked him into retiring, didn't invalidate his promise, did it? She was far from not being able to dance as good, if not better, than the young 30-year-olds, or even 20-year-olds for that matter. She could kick as high as any of those young gals, slide into a full split on the floor, and lay her chest and nose flat against her leg. She was not ready to quit the dance. Why did he think just because she had one more annual passing of the day she graced this earth that she was no longer capable of performing? The cool water in front of her gurgled. Another large bubble floated to the top of the water line in the glass jug, which was only quarter full. Lily snapped out of her reverie. She needed to get this routine down pat before rehearsal started. Downing another Dixie cup full of water, she threw the paper cup in the trash. She glanced at her watch. 2.5 hours until the cast would show up for rehearsal. Moving to the spot where her dance began, she positioned herself. All she wanted was to show that Kathy that she could not humiliate Lily with an over-the-top difficult routine. Lily lifted her chin. God only knew she'd suffered enough humiliation in the hands of judgmental people like Kathy. And 5, 6, 7, 8. She bent her knees, swung her heels in the Charleston style, stepped forward, landing exactly on her mark, turned, swung her arms out and back, continuing through the dance steps to the end. She nailed the routine. "Yay," she whispered. Pleased with her progress, she pranced back to the beginning point. She went through the routine several more times, nailing it each time. Good, she nodded to herself. All right, one more time. She moved to the beginning spot, bent over at her waist, pressed her fingers into her side as she walked. She moaned, "Oh, these cramps." Taking position, she counted, and 5, 6, 7, 8. She danced through the routine. Instead of counting, she sang the music that accompanied the movements. With a swing of her leg, she stepped forward, kicked her foot over her head, swung the other leg, stepped forward, and something hard slammed into her neck and shoulder, shoving her down with its weight. It was so heavy. Snapping sounds in her neck and a loud crash on the floor registering in her fading awareness. Her head collided with the wooden floor. The air in her lungs was gone. She couldn't draw more back in. Such pain. She tried to move. She pushed away from the floor, but her body would not respond. She opened her mouth to cry for help, but she couldn't utter a sound. Darkness closed in all around her like a spotlight suddenly turned off. Her stage went black. All right. Do you want to go to a commercial and then do chapter 1, or do you want me to go ahead and start? You tell me what you want to do, Mr. Tay.
Well, we could take a break now, and then we can just go through the top of the hour. So, okay.
Yeah, let's do that. All right. See y'all in a little bit. are back with Right Time Radio, and this is Lynn Hunter here today with Tay.
Yeah, Lynn is not with us today.
Lynn Donovan is not with us today. It's not kind of nice having an alter ego. You could say they did it.
I keep trying that, but people don't believe me.
I know, I hear you.
I come in, it's like it was my evil twin.
Yeah, it was my evil twin.
What's his name?
It was my pen name. Yeah. All right, so on with Chapter 1. And Chapter 1 starts with 6 weeks earlier. Trixie Thomas gathered her papers neatly and put them in her satchel so that she could take them home to grade tonight. The last of her first grade students were gone. With her blackboard clean, she checked the class... hang on the computer, I went down too far. She checked the class projects, food and water. The white rabbit looked content and sleepy in its cage. Good night, Bunny. She turned off the lights and stepped out of the classroom. See you tomorrow. She locked the door. Miss Thomas, her friend Paula Simmons' voice came from down the hall. Trixie looked in the direction of the familiar voice, and Paula held her daughter Mindy's hands and somewhat dragged the child along with her. Well, that explained her using her formal teacher moniker. Oh, Paula, is Mindy all right? Oh, yeah, sure. Paula scurried up to catch up with her. Are you going to the theater tonight? Sure, aren't you? Mindy grabbed Trixie around the legs, and the first graders in a first grader's sweet hug. Trixie automatically put her hand on the child's head and gently returned her affection, even though this same exchange had just taken place a few minutes ago when class was dismissed for the day. She looked at Paula with concern. Antonio is posting the results of the auditions. Yes, I know. Her octave rose 2 or 3 levels. I'm so nervous. The woman trembled. Trixie giggled. What part are you hoping for? Golly, I don't care, so long as I got a part. I suppose if it were up to me, I'd choose B or Ann. Well, sure, Trixie giggled again. Me too. I wouldn't pretend I could get the lead. Paula nodded. Not with Kathy and Babs McCoy, not to mention Lily Brighton trying too. I heard Antonio was favoring Babs, but she's a bit of a shoo-in, considering she's the right age and has been dancing all of her life. Then Lily, Paula rolled her head and her eyes. Oh, a formal professional line dancer. One of them will get it for sure. Yeah, I'm really, that's like for the best. I'm afraid if it was that I'm a bit of a dead hoofer compared to those 3. Let them get the lead part with the clam-baked dance routine. Paula laughed and waved a dismissive hand. Oh, you're not kidding. There's no way. Trixie smiled sympathetically. She could hear in Paula's voice that she secretly did wish she could get the lead part. Anything was possible. This is community theater, not Broadway. They reached the exterior doors of the school. Well, Paula hesitated. I'll see you tonight. Sure thing. Trixie turned to give her friend a quick hug. Break a leg. You too. Paula's lip trembled, but she tried to smile. Trixie walks to her apartment across Pioneer Park and climbed the 3 flights of stairs. As she inserted her key, her dachshund barked and scratched at the door. Sherlock always heard her unlocking the door and was ready to greet her enthusiastically. Hi, Sherlock. She squatted at her threshold to pet him. He dashed around the door as it opened and leapt into her open arms, licking her face and whining with delight. I missed you, too. Marcus will be here soon, and we'll all walk to the theater. You going to be a good boy tonight? She ruffled his ears and patted his head. Mommy may get a part in a play tonight. Sherlock wriggled out of her arms and ran to where she hung his leash. He jumped and barked. The next door apartment door opened just a sliver. Oh, Miss Trixie, it's you. Yes, Miss Beasley, it's me. How are you today? Oh, I'm good enough, I suppose. She sounded sad. I heard your little dog barking, and I was worried someone had let him out. The maintenance man is so thoughtless. Really? Trixie paused to consider her words. Well, it's just me, and Sherlock is fine. Oh, good. Miss Beasley shoved tightly permed locks from her face. I was worried. Well, don't be. Trixie turned from the woman, hoping the endless and meaningless conversation had ended. She paused a moment to listen. When Mrs. Beasley's door clicked closed, Trixie walked on into her apartment. She filled a glass of water and drank it, and before going into her bedroom to change into a more casual, high-waisted sailor pants and blouse, dresses and skirts were required by the school board for female teachers, but at a community theater, just about anything was a norm. A knock sounded at her door. Sherlock ran to it, barking. His tail wagged so hard his back end wiggled too. He buried his nose at the crack at the bottom of the door and quickly inhaled the scent of whoever stood on the other side. Trixie laughed at him as she opened the door. "Hey-oh," she greeted her lifelong friend, Dr. Marcus McGuire. Her older brother, Frank, and Marcus graduated the same year from high school, but Marcus had been like family for as long as she could remember. They went separate ways when Frank went into the police academy in the Springs and Marcus to CSU in Fort Collins for vet medicine. She and Donald Lee went to Pueblo, Colorado State University. They still got together when everyone was in town, but it seemed closer that they got to their careers, the less they got together for fun. It had always been Frank, Marcus, Donald, and her running around town getting into trouble. Her oldest brother, Raymond Jr., had regarded Marcus as a younger brother, too. They were all one big happy family until Marcus Jr. disappeared. That's not the end of the thing, but we're kind of out of time, so I'm just going to leave it there. It's a great hanging spot. Yeah. You want me to keep reading?
Well, we got about 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll keep reading.
All right.
So
just her older brother, a little deeper into it.
Her older brother is missing. Older brother is missing.
There you go.
Okay. Frank seemed sour after Raymond Jr. was missing. He hardly got out to socialize, seldom attended church. She barely saw him at all anymore. Ever so often she would talk to Frank into going to dinner with her, but mostly he went to work and then went home in his tiny efficiency duplex. He had practically turned into a recluse. Marcus ran a small animal side of his father's veterinary clinic, while his father ran the large animal side. They hardly saw each other, too. Maybe that was how the senior Dr. McGuire preferred it. He'd always favored the large equine patients over the dogs, cats, lizards, and snakes. Marcus even treated rabbits. At least he treated the rabbit she brought in from her class project. And it goes on, and I hope everybody's interested in it. And I'm planning on starting to publish them in latter June.
Okay.
And then they'll be like one every 3 weeks. So we're going to publish, well, I have 6 of them, but I've been advised in the marketing realm to publish 3, see how they do.
Right.
And maybe start on another cozy mystery in another setting and then publish 3 of those. And then if the first 2 are doing well, then go back and publish 4, 5, and 6. So
that makes sense.
That's the strategy. It really does, and I'd never really heard that. So
people going, "Ooh, give me more."
Yeah,
that's what you want,
and
right?
that's what you want, and you kind of wait and see if that's what happens. And if you don't get any response, then and you can move on to something else.
Go a different direction. Yeah. Hey, maybe you could get with Tracy.
Hey, Tracy would love the darker. She probably watches Dexter. I'm gonna have to ask her next time I see her.
Dexter, for those of you that are not aware, he is a serial killer that they've works with the police department to find other serial killers.
It's like,
is that not the premise?
Yeah, it's like you need a killer to find killers, kind of a thing. But
that's encouraging.
Every so often,
he's a serial killer and he's out.
Yeah,
what could be possibly wrong with this?
Yeah, and the really gross part is every so often he punishes a bad person in his own personal way, which is basically skins them while they're alive. But yeah, it's gross.
Wouldn't that be a good way to go?
I actually watched a show of it, and then I watched the next one, and then by the next one, it's like this is the same thing over and over to me. I'm done.
Well, actually, we are.
And we are done.
We are done.
Come back next week. I do have a guest coming in. You're going to love her. She actually writes about corgis.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right.